We are still in campus at EPFL with my partner Antoine Guillemin and one PhD student in physics in condensed matter. Simon Bonani. And you just told me that you found out the website of LENR and you were interested to know a little bit more about what we're doing and what is our connection with the LENR world.
Exactly. Okay. And so now we met here to discuss about the project, since it's somehow connected to my PhD project.
So what is your PhD project?
My PhD project is about nanocatalysis. So we study the catalytic activity of small metal clusters supported
at
by the nano level. Yes. So I think we would like to see the effect of the size of those clusters on the catalytic activity. And somehow I was interested in your project because I read some of the work by Celani.
Yeah.
And he's saying, he was citing Arata, he's saying that if the nickel is nanostructured, it's more reactive.
Definitely.
Yeah.
There are two effects. First effect is you need to improve the surface contact, the surface connection between either deuterium and palladium or between hydrogen and nickel. And to do that, you increase the surface. So instead of using a plate or block, you use a wire. Then instead of using a wire, you use powder or surface effect by depositing powder on the surface of a wire, for example. And then you can do also thermal effect to create cracks and vacancies, small vacancies at atomic scale in the surface. And if we can really have material engineering doing nanostructure on the surface, this will definitely help. Basically, LENR works by doping, by charging, in the case of hydrogen and nickel, doping hydrogen inside the nickel lattice. And to do that, if you have nanoscale control of your material, you improve the reaction. And we are working with Professor Celani in one project we have, which the goal is to replicate Celani's experiment and duplicate that and send that to different universities so that they can test and validate that it's real. It's a real effect.
The thing
with the wire.
Costantano.
Yeah, Costantano wire.
Okay.
So we are building several of them,
okay.
And with different partners in the US, in a British guy that is based in India right now, and a French guy. And we will visit. We're planning to visit Celani very soon. And our cell is ready in the US. We have one version in a few weeks here. I'm working on the electronics to measure, to be able to have a kit that we can send to different universities.
This Celani reactor in the cell of Celani is not as efficient as one of those.
No, that's not the goal. That's not actually the goal. Is working right now to make it self-sustained, so to actually have infinity efficiency. We will try to help him. One way to improve that. So working on the nanostructure is one way. The other way is to increase the temperature. If the temperature gets higher, the experiment works better. Currently, Celani is working at 250 degrees C, and we designed a cell that is robust to temperature up to 1,200 degrees. So we will, with safety margin, we will be able to run it at least at 500 degrees C.
Celani is limited in temperature because
of the glass.
The surface.
The glass is using Duran glass from Schott, and this is limited to 500 degrees, and he wants to keep a safety margin, so he never tries above 250, 300 degrees.
It could be in the long term also that the Constantine wire will not survive.
That's something we need to check. So his project, his demonstration is fairly recent. The first time he showed it was in August, and we're in September. So we still have some tests to do, and but this will happen until the end of the year. So we want to send the kit with the same experiments, not to improve it, and in parallel do some improvement and see how we can reach a better efficiency. But one way to reach a better efficiency is to have multiple wires. With one wire that is active, you get 20 watt extra heat, but you don't need to put current in the wire to make it active. You just need heat. So if one is active with current input, then you can have other active wire around that are not
without any
there's no input of energy, and then they will produce extra heat. Maybe not 20, maybe less, maybe 10, but if you put 10 of them, you get 100 watts.
Another question about how the excess of heat is measured, because there are still a lot of those experiments.
In this experiment, actually, Chauvin is not concentrated on getting the exact precision. It's more, you have to see it as a differential measurement. So he's using Stefan Boltzmann law on radiators to determine, to get an approximation of the heat from the temperature. So he's measuring the temperature outside the cell, and this gives you an estimation of the heat that is produced. It's a relation with the power of 4 of temperature. You can correct it with ambient temperature. But what is important is that you calibrate your system with the other wire, the calibration wire, which is in nichrome. It's very standard alloy to do heat resistor, and you calibrate it with argon atmosphere, so you're sure you have no chemical effect. And you put 50 watts in your system, and you calibrate maybe for one day. You calibrate that the temperature you measure with Stefan Boltzmann law, it should give you 50 watts. And then you change the atmosphere, you put hydrogen in it, and you run with the other wire, and then you get difference. You get this 20 watt differences. So maybe it's not 20 watt, maybe it's going to be 10 watt because it's an approximation, but you get excess heat.
Yeah, so
that's the only goal actually. And you don't care about how precise you are in the estimation of the heat. It just needs to be reproducible. If you do the experiment again, you should get the same type of number. And you should be validated that the energy you measure at the entrance is very stable. You're not having one day 50 watt and the other day 60 watts. But we're confident that it's easy to do. It's DC current, it's DC voltage and current, so it's not something difficult to measure.
Everything will be provided in the kit.
Yeah, in the kit, including safety material like
the kit for the universities.
Yeah,
exactly.
Including alpha, beta, gamma, X-rays that will be connected to the computer to measure the emission if there's any emission. Currently, the Australia has never seen any emission with hydrogen. It's seen some neutrons with deuterium, but with hydrogen, never seen any radioactivity. But we don't know if we increase the temperature, for example, there's a risk of having some neutrons, and we need to be careful.
I don't know if you know, I saw a few days ago on a website, ECAT Australia.
Yeah. We've been in contact at the conference in Zurich. They were present, Bill Donovan and
Yeah, I was just with them at the ECAT conference. I spent 2 days, well, a day and a half after the conference talking to them. We were going around on a ferry, doing a little touring, and I had quite a bit of time with them to talk about what they're doing and also their perception of the ECAT and their confidence that the ECAT is a real technology is quite interesting.
And apparently on the website you can buy one of these 1 megawatt.
Yeah, it's possible now because it's
some people already bought. Is still some this 1 megawatt model working somewhere in the world?
In about 2 months from now, they're going to have a model, or actually an installation in northern Italy, where people can go and see one in operation, because the previous installations have been government, military, secret type of things, and they don't want people coming in. But this will be something that people can go in, kick the tires, look at it, see it in operation, take measurements, and then buy one.
And there's a good reason for that, is that they had to wait for the safety certification in order to be allowed to sell this 1 megawatt plants for civil application. And they just received this certification a few weeks ago, and it has been certified by SGS, Société Générale de Surveillance. This is the biggest certification company in the world. So
that was last week.
Yeah, that was last week. So now it's open. Anyone can buy the 1 megawatt plant and that's for interest. So
but maybe it was interesting also to talk about his work and his contact. So he just started to explain me his experiment, and maybe you are going to explain it better. But the idea was really to maybe you can explain it yourself.
Yeah, my project is about nanocatalysis. So we would like to see the effect of the size of the clusters of metals on the catalytic activity.
Doing what type of catalytic?
For the moment, we are doing the simplest one, which is CO combustion.
Okay.
Conversion of CO into CO2.
Okay.
Which takes place, for example, in the catalyst in the car. And then we would like also to study the Haber-Bosch process, so for the production of ammonia, from hydrogen, nitrogen, as a function of the cluster size. In that case, now we are studying CO combustion, we use platinum. In that case, it will be iron, which is the catalyst used for Haber-Bosch process. And then for the moment, we deposit those clusters in ultra vacuum on a titanium dioxide, which is a typical support for catalyst.
So the titan oxide is porous? Or?
In our case, we study model systems, so it's a single crystal.
Okay.
So it's perfectly flat, and we deposit the cluster in ultra vacuum with the cluster source, which is a bit complicated. But basically, just some machine that allows us to select the size of the cluster. So we can say we want 10 atoms, 11 atoms, 8 atoms. Then we put it on the surface. They just land there, and then we analyze this surface with cluster with a microscope, the morphology, and then we develop an instrument to study the catalytic activity. So we inject the desired gas on it. In this case, it's CO and oxygen, and we see what comes out, CO2 or water.
But what is the effect of the?
So you're printing like a inkjet printer. You're printing.
Yeah, more or less, yes.
Atomic level.
We cannot choose exactly where atoms land.
Okay.
I mean, you have a beam of cluster, which is diameter of half centimeter, more or less.
So huge compared to the thickness you deposit. But
yes. We deposit very. I don't know if you know about surface science. We talk about monolayers there.
Yeah.
So one monolayer is equal to the density. For example, we now deposit platinum. So one monolayer is defined as the atomic density of the platinum 111 surface, which is 1.5 in 10 to the 15 atoms per square centimeter. We deposit usually 1-2% of monolayer of platinum. So 10 to 13 atoms per square centimeter, which looks a big number, 10 to 15, but consider it's small. And we have to deposit just a very little amount of material, because if we deposit too much, there's a high probability that two clusters land next to each other.
And then somehow.
Then we would like to study the effect of the size.
Okay, so it's just for this. Yeah. And the titanium oxide has no interest in the experiment. Should be neutral somehow.
Theoretically, it should be, but then we found out it's not. For example, we saw that as a function of the reduction state of the titanium dioxide, the catalytic activity can change. Because titanium dioxide is a very complex material. It's not. I mean, you can see the picture of how the structure should look like in an ideal way. So you have the real, but in the real way, it's more different. It's different because it's a reducible oxide. So it means that you can, by annealing or by bringing it to high temperature in a reducing environment, so an environment like to remove oxygen, lose oxygen, and this creates defects.
Like locally, titanium just titanium metal?
Yeah, usually yes. Yeah, usually what happens is you can see like a chessboard, like the board features, and the black squares of titanium, the white one atoms.
And metal and ceramics.
Yeah, one oxygen atom leaves, and so locally the environment is different, and this can change the
property, the chemical property.
Yeah, the absorption of gases, and so on. Yeah, there are a lot of articles going, a lot of research going on just on that clean titanium dioxide surface with many competing models.
That was actually during the show of Sherani Cell. Some of the scientists were saying that, well, there's no presence of oxygen in the system, but there are ceramics, and if the ceramic is actually releasing oxygen, you might be just burning hydrogen with oxygen and create the excessive from this effect. And he said, okay, but then if you count the mass of oxygen that is in the ceramic and count the amount of hydrogen there is, and you do the mass of calculating the energy of all the molecules of water that you can create, you cannot create this amount of energy over 3-4 days. He has been challenged on getting oxygen where you don't think we can get it from ceramics.
Do they have a theory to explain how from a chemical reaction to absorption of oxygen, dissociation of oxygen, they can finally produce a nuclear reaction, which is two different worlds?
There are many different theories, but the best one now it's a vibration. You have to have. In the case of nickel and hydrogen, the nickel is small enough to vibrate, and you have to have a zone in your system that vibrates in phase, and that creates the condition that start the reaction. So Peter Algerstein has a good model to explain this. But there are. He has read about, I think, 200 more than 200 models potentially explaining the reaction, and he has his own. He has built about 50 models, but his latest one is quite confident that it matched all the experiments he did over the last 20 years. So now he's calculating with his model new type of experience with new material like gold or like titanium that are been barely used, and calculating what is the excessive you should get in that condition, and do the experiment after doing the modeling. But you have the most accepted theory is the William-Larsen theory, and there are other theories. The people that are skeptics are saying it's not possible to do fusion or any nuclear reaction due to the Coulomb barrier. You need to break the Coulomb barrier. The Coulomb barrier, to my simple understanding, is that you have an electrical effect that blocks you because if you take the hydrogen nucleus, it's a proton, it's charged positively, and you cannot put two hydrogen nucleus close to each other. But if you take in account that there's an electron turning around and that this orbit of the electron is not always a sphere, it can be an ellipse, and then in some case you can have the electron very close to the nucleus, to the neutron, to the proton, and then in that case the charge seen at a certain distance is different, but this happened in a picosecond level. That is a potential explanation. Then you have lots of at nano level scale. You have lots of charge effect. You can have some areas that are charged electrically due to some defect, and create an electric field with other areas. If you take, for example, the needle effect in electricity, it's a surface effect, and if you imagine that at nanoscale, you can have locally very high electric field in the matter that are not very well known and understood, and that can help the reactions. Another simple theory is basically if you simply take Heisenberg principle, saying that when a particle, the product of the uncertainty of the position with the uncertainty on the quantity of movement is constant. So if you fix the position of a particle, then you increase this
uncertainty on the movement,
basically its energy. And one way of understanding it is that the metal lattice is trapping protons. It's trapping and locking it in a fixed position. Like one way to illustrate it is like having a golf ball that starts. So it's rolling, it's moving, and once it's entering the hole, it's locked in that position. And then it can, for me, from my understanding, it's easier to make, for example, a collision between an electron and this proton in the metal lattice, because if this proton is fixed and you can create current in the metal, then you have much more chance than if the particles are in free air, and if you try to put an electron close to it, the particle will move.
Do we have an explanation why it works with certain metal only? Because this would be something interesting also.
There's a Brownian energy has some theory about the electron layers that are in this column of nickel, palladium, and platinum. This column has specific catalytic effect and is known in chemistry for that for a long time. So.
Okay, so it's more an electronic property, it's not a nuclear property of the nucleus of nickel.
No, for me, to my understanding, the nickel is acting just as an electrical catalyst, and that is creating the good condition to do the reaction. Then the reaction for me is creating neutrons, and once neutrons are done, that is not well known, is how these neutrons react either with hydrogen and create deuterium and tritium, and then deuterium and tritium can react and create helium-4. Or the other type of application is this neutron is reacting with the nickel and increasing the atomic.
Is it want to make like an inverse of the beta decay? So usually the beta decay and neutron decay into electron, proton, and neutrino. Then they make the opposite.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you need energy to do that. To do this collision, to do this transmutation of a proton into a neutron, you need to bring in energy because it's the opposite of. But then this neutron is reacting with the rest of the element around, and this will bring energy back. That's basically the. But I'm not a physicist, so that's
I was very happy to because I am reading about the energy nuclear reactor.
But if you're interested, I have hundreds and hundreds of papers explaining in detail theories, but they don't. They start to merge a little bit towards the same explanation, but they have different theories. Some of them are being more advanced and precise to.
Bill Donovan has a really interesting theory where he's saying that what's happening is there's two things going on at the same time. You have with the deuterium, hydrogen or helium going to deuterium is one reaction, and then another reaction is the nickel is actually going to copper.
With
several steps going on with the you've got the I'm going to slaughter this, but you've got, let's say it's 59 to 60, 61, all the way up to the 60. I'm totally slaughtering this, but you've got the different forms of the
different isotope of nickel until it's unstable and it beta decays into copper. That's one. But some other experimentalists have seen other type of metal. So from nickel they could create iron, chromium, vanadium. And so you not only have reaction that increase the atomic mass, you have also some elements that are losing neutrons or even losing protons and even then transmute to lower elements. So it's difficult to understand what type of reaction are really happening because they can happen. It can be millions of reactions of creating unstable element until you reach a stable state. What we can know is what is before and what is after. But in between, it's currently impossible to say.
Yeah, always happens very fast. So.
Yeah. What people have measured in many cases is that it's those volcano pictures that they can visualize under atomic microscopy, and so it's really you have a crater like a cone. There's no matter anymore, no metal anymore, and it's melted on the side like lava. And the U.S. Navy, the spyware group of the U.S. Navy, calculated the volume of metal that was missing and calculated the energy needed to vaporize, at least vaporize, if not getting a plasma of this amount of metal. And so this energy cannot be chemical. And
then if you have the paper, it would really be interesting.
Yeah, sure. But you need a big flash disk because it's
okay.
I have lots of it.
Yeah, I don't have it now. Maybe.
No, but no problem. Or maybe you come to my office.
Yeah, it was very helpful to see the website to see some people
here.
Here.
An interesting person that I met in the conference was a young Russian scientist. She works she's an engineer in designing nuclear plants, and she was present at the conference in Zurich, and actually we exchanged email. I sent her different information of Russian scientists that are working in that field. And by doing some research on her name, she was in the demonstration of Rossi's 1 megawatt plant in Bologna 1 year ago. She was one of the few persons invited to.
Wow.
So
insider.
Yeah, insider.
This is good.
Yeah.
So but we are also really for us also the idea in the short term would be really to try to involve EPFL in some way. So the idea of the LENRThe cell would be to have the LENRThe reactor here once in one lab. Yeah.
Okay.
Because we want to convince EPFL that really something is happening.
Yeah, because the problem is this community is not really recognized.
It's not at all.
Not at all.
It's not at all. Even if lots of scientists from reputed university, like I'm in contact with Michael McCroubray, who is director of the energy department at SRI. SRI is the research the Stanford Research Institute, one of the most important research institute in the US who produced the number of discovery and invention, like internet. Internet is ARPANET at the beginning was developed at SRI. The computer mouse was developed at SRI. Siri on the iPhone was developed at SRI. We can go on. The list is so long. The fax, I think.
Maybe do you have some names of interesting professors in the condensed matter physics?
I know condensed matter physics. I know some my professor, my thesis director, and I know some names from chemistry.
Okay.
But I think he was, because we had a collaboration with him, but I don't know, I think he's retired now, but I still
I know
cross him
contact
sometimes.
of people here who was actually a student from Martin Fleischmann, Hubert Giraud, electrochemist professor here, very famous. And I discussed about my project, but he was saying, okay, I worked in LENR 20 years ago, and I did 1 year research and we found nothing at that time, so be careful on what you're doing. But I think he can be interested once we have Celani's experiment replicated here and that he can see.
Because you're looking for some collaboration, some professor here that will accept
Yeah,
it.
I mean, the research for me, even if it started more than 20 years ago, it's only at the beginning. So it needs a lot of effort to really improve the reaction, make it even better. And
Yeah, it's still at the point you have to convince people it exists.
yeah.
It's hard.
This is strange to that. We have to provide tools to university in order to make it happening.
Yeah, it's startup who needs to prove that research can be done. To involve
Yeah, this is
applied
strange world.
research
Yeah,
in,
Yeah, because probably with not too much money you could get something. Because I saw some work from Celani, and this compared to the experiment we do is kind of simple.
yeah, it's simple. That's why we chose
quite
this
cheap,
one.
yeah.
We chose this one because it's simple and it does not cost too much money and effort to replicate it. So other experiments are more complex. Sometimes they involve, for example, at MIT you have the startup Jet Energy who's doing the nano. It's a small cell, but it's you have a palladium wire nano coated with deuterium encapsulated in zirconium capsule. It's quite expensive to manufacture.
Has Mitch Schwartz
Mitch
been
Schwartz.
running continuous since January?
Yeah. So last time so in Korea a few weeks ago, I discussed with Peter Algenstein, who is having one of the cells in his lab, and he said he's been running for more than 4 months now, 4 or 5 months.
He's still running. Yeah.
Yes, actually still since January, so it's even more closer to 6 months.
Since he
now.
did his MIT Cold Fusion 101 class.
Yeah. And he's been running around. The cell has a little leakage of deuterium, so it's not sealed, perfectly sealed, but still it's still running. But it's not running continuously. It has to run for 1 hour, stop the experiment, stop the input current for 1 hour to relax the cell, but the excess heat is 10 times. The COP is 10 times what he puts in. And during the time he needs to relax the cell is putting the input power into a normal resistor, and is measuring that the heat from the heat resistor is 10 times smaller than what you get from the cell. And he's switching from one and the other every hour for now 6 months. I'm getting data. It shows some real effect, and with the backup of one very, very renowned professor at MIT.
Yeah, but probably it's very hard to convince some established professor to work on this because they will be worried, and then others will say, they lose their credibility.
Yeah.
Because they start, he works on these strange things.
When I interviewed Mike McCubry about a month ago, he actually recommended that PhD students postpone their interest and pursuit of cold fusion until they establish the credibility, and then they can wreck their credit. They've established the credibility, so they don't wreck it by going into cold fusion.
This is tricky. So, but for us, really, the goal is
the demonstration.
To demonstrate and convince people by demonstration.
And then we know we can, if this can be done, then we can get budgets to develop what we really want to do. What I want to do is bring this technology to the transportation industry. So cars is one application, but I'm considering trains, boats. Cars is probably the most complex because we need to certify it for every drunk people who can drive a car. But in a boat that goes in international water, it's probably more easy. And then trains, you don't go in the in the locomotive in the train to interact with the motor and the thing. So the security level, the safety level is. And first, to do that, before to putting in something that moves, you need to prove that you can first create heat, excess heat, and create excess electricity.
So, but now you're started up, so the final project would be to build cars. And
Yes.
but for the moment, your project is develop a cell.
That's one project. Another project is to work on different solution to convert heat into electricity and use that with the most effective reactor.
There's another startup here at EPFL from LENRThe. I don't know if
Yeah, matter.
Yeah.
The problem is the efficiency she's talking about is
not enough for your.
is 1%.
Okay.
So, but she's working on very large scale system
Yeah, they want to recuperate the heat from
for
computers,
computer data center and just recover very little amount of heat. So we can do already with some partner, we can do about 20% conversion with a steam piston engine. I will have access to a Stirling engine with 30% efficiency within 2 months. And the goal is to test the Stirling engine with something like what we call the hot cat.
Okay. What is
The hot cat is the heat working at high temperature, working so
More than 600.
It has been measured 870 peak, 800 on the average, but they stopped the reaction because the camera, they're using a thermal camera, and the camera was calibrated, cannot measure temperature above 900 degrees C, but they finally reached temperature at around 1050 degrees C. And with that, again, if you use Stefan Boltzmann, you reach power that is in the range of 15 to 17 kilowatts. And,
Yeah, the hot cat is extremely promising for.
it's very small. It's that size.
who is developing this?
Certain Andrea Rossi.
Okay.
And
He actually ran that in self-loop mode
Yeah.
and has data from that, but he didn't release that at the conference because the certification says you can't do self-looping because
it's dangerous, because you cannot stop it. It's not easy to stop. You need to cool it down, and to cool it down, you need. It's not easy to have a cooling system fast, or you have lots of. You have CO2, liquid CO2 somewhere, or.
Yeah, like if you put water, maybe we dissociate and you give me more hydrogen.
So, but this is one goal. Andrea Rossi is relatively interested, if not very, very interested, to test this Stirling engine with this hot cat. And if then we can close the loop, so bring enough electricity to power the hot cat, and then we have an electrical control to stop to reduce the reaction and stop the reactor. Then there's no safety concern anymore. And out of, let's say, we produce 30% of we convert 30% of the heat into electricity. This gives you 70% of remaining heat that can be, even if you don't produce electricity, you still have 70%. So out of, let's say, 10 kilowatts, you still have 7 kilowatts of continuous heat at high temperature. So you still even can transform this heat into electricity with lower grade system. So we're confident that next year we will be able to do electricity.
And you're the Parc Scientifique?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And then when we start to do electricity, continuous electricity, then we get budget to do a bigger prototype, and then we can put it in a car to recharge batteries. Hopefully end of next year. Then then for a real car, it's gonna take maybe 1 decade for certification, design and optimization. The goal is to go step by step. First step is doing a small cell, and then next step, and then.
Yeah, then maybe at a certain point some big company will buy the startup or something.
Probably. Then we start another startup.
Serial entrepreneur.
That a wrap?
Nano level, yeah. So it's particularly we would like to see the effect of the size of those clusters on the catalytic behavior. And somehow I was interested in your project because I read some of the work by Celani.
Yeah.
And he's saying, he was citing Arata, he's saying that if the nickel is nanostructured, it's more reactive.
Definitely. That's there are two effects. First effect is you need to improve the surface contact, the surface connection between either deuterium and palladium or between hydrogen and nickel. And to do that, you increase the surface. So you, instead of using a plate or block, you use a wire. Then instead of using a wire, you use powder or surface effect by depositing powder on the surface of a wire, for example. And then you can do also thermal effect to create cracks and vacancies, small vacancies at atomic scale in the surface. And if we can really have material engineering doing nanostructure on the surface, this will definitely help. Basically, LENR works by doping, by charging, in the case of hydrogen and nickel, doping hydrogen inside the nickel lattice. And to do that, if you have nano we are still in campus at EPFL with my partner Antoine Guillemin and one PhD student in physics in condensed matter, Simon Bonani. And you just told me that you found out the website of LENR cars and you were interested to know a little bit more about what we're doing and what is our connection with the LENR world.
Exactly. And so now we met here to discuss about the project, since it's somehow connected to my PhD project.
So what is your PhD project?
My PhD project is about nanocatalysis. So we study the catalytic activity of small metal clusters supported. And our cell is ready in the US. We'll have one version in a few weeks here. I'm working on the electronics to measure, to be able to have a kit that we can send to different universities. This Celani reactor in the cell of Celani is not as efficient as one of those.
No, that's not the goal. That's not actually the goal. He's working right now to make it self-sustained, so to actually have infinity efficiency. We will try to help him. One way to improve that. So working on the nanostructure is one way. The other way is to increase the temperature. If the temperature gets higher, the experiment works better. Currently, Celani is working at 250 degrees C, and with this scale control of your material, you improve the reaction. And we are working with Professor Celani in one project we have, which the goal is to replicate Celani's experiment and duplicate that and send that to different universities so that they can test and validate that it's real. It's a real effect.
The thing
with the wire.
Constantano.
Yeah, Constantano wire.
Okay.
So we are building several of them,
okay.
And with different partners in the US, in a British guy that is based in India right now, and a French guy. And we're planning to visit Celani very soon.